Hi guys, I'm Zen and welcome back. And in this video we're going to be looking at neumorphic design. This is apparently a big trend coming up in 2020. We've seen it before, but apparently it's going to be big again. This is a bit of a break from the other videos I've been making recently. The other videos are obviously a lot more basic, taking you from ground zero. But there obviously are going to be a lot of people out there that are way past that level and are looking for more interesting things, and this does give you a little taste of what I'm planning to be adding to this channel once I've got the basics done. Now, I think the neumorphic design is what I would call a blend out design. What I mean by that is that when we look at people doing websites normally, they're either looking at contrasting colors so they really stand out, or they're looking for complementary colours that allows them to blend in. But with neumorphic design, what we're really doing is taking a colour and then adding slight shades to it so that it blends out and becomes visible, but only slightly visible. Okay, because this is what neumorphic is. This element's colour is actually the same as the background. It is completely the same as the background. It's only the shadow effects that we've added, and that's all neumorphic design really is subtle shadows in order to make it stand out. And there are many different ways of doing this. You'll see a lot of advanced places will start talking about HSL and HSV values, which I think a lot of people will find a bit confusing. I found a way of doing it which is using normal RGB and RGBA values, and I do think it is the easiest way to do it. And these four things that you see on the screen are what we're going to make today. So let's get on it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just give myself a 50-50 split so I can see what I'm working on and the code at the same time. Obviously this is my reference, but we won't need to worry about that. We shall replace it with our working code in a moment. So the first thing we're going to do, as always, is to create a new file. We're going to call it neumorphic, if I can spell it, neumorphic-1.html. I'm not planning on making a second page, but we never know what happens. Okay, and as normal, we are going to create a basic HTML5 page, and I'm just going to show you in live server, and then I can close it down so we can see the code better. Okay, so we've got quite a boring white background. All this will change in a moment. As always, one of the things I like doing is to create the HTML section first. Okay, I think it's very important that we have the elements first and then styling it second. So let's do it. We're going to have first of all a rectangle. So let's make a rectangle class element. Next one was a rounded rectangle, so we're just going to call it rounded, so dot rounded class. Then we had the circle, so again dot circle class, and then we had a text box. So a text box is a input element, and it is type text, and I'm going to give it a class of text box, and I'm going to give it an ID of text box because it's one of the things that I'll pass off the standard HTML for it, and we'll give the name text box as well. In truth, don't really need a name and ID because we're not going to be doing anything with it. We're not going to be making this form working, but I always think it is good practice to always make sure that your elements are got the correct attributes attached to them. Okay, so if we save that, the only thing that's going to show up will be our text box, because by default that has a width, a height and a border that allows it to stand out. For the other elements, they don't exist yet. They're 0 by 0 pixels, and so we're going to use some code to change that. So as usual, we're going to start our internal style sheet, which is great for when we are practicing, but not very good for a real life website. And now, as I said before, we're going to change the background color of the page, which is the body, and we're going to go and do RGB colors. Okay, now quite often you'll see me using either named colors or standard hexadecimal values. For doing this, especially since we're learning, or you're learning, maybe I'm still learning, I find using RGB and RGBA easier to understand, simply because it's easier to do maths in normal decimal. For those of you who don't know, when we do RGB channels instead of hexadecimal, we're still doing red, green, blue channels, but the numbers are between 0 and 255 in decimal, okay, which makes it much easier to do simple maths. So we're going to do a background colour, and like I said, we're going to use RGB. You can use any colour you want. It can be blue, it can be purple, it can be pink, it can be green, whatever you want. The only thing you need to make sure is that not one channel, okay, so is 0 or 255. In fact, you want to make sure that you can add and subtract between the two numbers equally. I'll explain what I mean in a little bit when we start looking at the shadows. So here we have 225, 230, 235. So like I said, this is the red channel, so it's quite strong red, quite strong green, quite strong blue. They're all roughly the same, okay? They're only like 5 out from each other. So what we actually get here is a slightly off grey, okay? I quite like it. It's like a sort of creamy grey. I think it's a nice colour. Looking at it on its own, you may not be able to see much, but compared to the white background of the text box, it's quite stark. Okay, so now to give some shape to our elements. Because my first 3 elements are all div elements, it's easier to use the div command or div rule to format all 3 of them at the same time. But I can also format the text box as well by doing a comma, and I don't need to put it on new line, but I do for aesthetics. And then I'm going to include the class of text box. I'm going to open up the brace. People will complain that this is breaking the BEM method, but actually the element rule is less specific than a class rule, so it actually wins. So anyway, back to this. So first thing we're going to do is use a background color, because later on we're going to change it to the same color as the background of the page. We're going to give it a different color at the moment just so we can see it, so then when it blends we can see it blending properly. It does make sense, trust me, I know what I mean. So we're going to do RGB, okay, and we're going to go for 25500. So we're going to go for pure blood red. And I say you can use red for this anyway, but I wouldn't use 255, or perhaps use 240 if I wanted to blend with the red. Okay, we're also going to give them all a margin of 50 pixels, just so there's a bit of distance between them, and we'll be able to see the shadow and highlights. We're going to display them inline block. This is just so they appear next to each other on our web page. Okay, and I shall leave that like that for the moment. In fact, no, I shall give them a width of 200 pixels and a height of 200 pixels. Now, because I've done that and that will apply to all of them, I don't want my text box to be 200 pixels high. So I'm just going to do that as a rule separately. So dot text box, and we'll give it a height. Let's just make it 40 pixels. Okay. So now when I save that, suddenly, there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. In fact, that's probably still too big. 40 pixels. Let's drop it down to 30. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so the reason why they're not all showing, just because I think I need to zoom this web page out a bit. There we go. Okay. So yeah, there you go. That's all shown all nicely. And now I just need to make some changes for them individually. So, for example, in our rounded one, oops. So in dot rounded, we're just going to go for a border radius of, let's just make it 30 pixels for the moment. Might be a bit too round actually, let's go for 20 pixels. Okay, so we've now got a rounded one there. And for a circle, because it still looks like a square at the moment, we're just going to use a border radius, and we're going to set it at 50% because I can't be bothered to do the maths. And then we have a perfect circle. And that's actually a very good trick for you guys if you're looking at doing that for images and make them circular. Border radius is your one thing to go for. Okay, so we've now basically got these, at least we think, the way we want them to. And I say the only real thing that you use in neumorphism is shadows. Okay, and what you actually do is that you use highlights and lowlights. Okay, so a low light being your normal shadow, a dark shadow, and a highlight being a lighter color. And what we tend to do is put the dark color offset to the bottom right. Okay, so an offset on the X and the Y as a positive value, so that will take it off here and down a bit. And then we do the highlight, the lighter shadow, and we offset it vertically up and to the left, so it'll come out here and up here. So we get a lighter mark out here and a darker mark down here. In fact, we can see that in here. You can see how we've got a slight light edge around here and a slight shadow around here, and that is the only thing that actually makes that stand out so much. That is the trick. So I'm going to show it to you first, okay, and we're going to do it first of all without a alpha channel in them, and then with an alpha channel, so we can see the difference between them. So let's first of all add our box shadow, because that's what we're using. And what we're going to do, we're going to do the dark shadow first, okay. In fact, before we do the dark shadow, because we know they're already there, let's set the color of our text box to the same as our body. Okay, so let's copy that and put that in here. Save that, and look at that, see, apart from this which has a border, they disappear. Now they haven't really disappeared, they're just the same color, you can't see them. So the box shadow is where it is, where all the magic is, okay? And it is extremely powerful in things like this, to give us that sort of view. So the first number we use is the horizontal offset, the X value, so how far to the right we're going to use it. When we use a positive number, it's going to the right. When we use a negative number, it moves it to the left. Next number is the vertical offset. Positive number brings the shadow down the screen. Negative number moves it up the screen. The next number is the blur, okay, of it, so it's just like how it sort of spreads out on the page. And then the final number is the spread, which is a bit hard, but it's literally how much more does it move out from its position as it sort of dissipates. And then we're going to use the color RGB. And again, you can use any of the normal colouring systems that you want, but RGB is a good one to use here. So 210, 215 and 220. Now I've done this with trial and error for a few days. Well, not a few days, whenever it is I did it. I spent some time doing it, and I felt that 15 shades different was the minimum you could really use for it to be effective. So if you look, 225 to 210 is down by 15, 230 to 215 is down by 15, and 235 down to 220 is 15. Now this is just, like I say, what I believe to be the easiest way to do it. All right, I'm not saying it's the right way. You'll find people, let's say, using the HSL system and saying, right, you miss out this one and use this color instead. But I seem to find that just knocking out 15 shades on each color works well. And as you can see on the screen, now I saved it, it has made a dramatic change. It's a really big change to it. Okay, and even though there is a slight shadow still moving its way up here because of I think it's because of the blur and the spread, and so the whole thing is highlighted now. The button looks a bit, the text box looks a bit unusual. Don't worry about that, we'll deal with that later. Okay, now like I said before, adding a bit of alpha, we can sort of blend this a bit more because it's a little bit too stark. A lot of people argue it's a bit too stark. So if we add the alpha channel, and then when we use the alpha channel in RGBA, it is a number between 0, which is, I believe, totally invisible, and 1, which is, solid. And again, I'm just going to go for 0.5. You'll see a lot of people go, well, no, you want to go 0.6, 0.65. And again, feel free, once you've got this set out yourself, to play with it as much as you like. This is the quickest guide on how to do so. So we save that. And you can see how it's softened it a lot more. Okay, so that's a much bigger softening of it. It's still popping out, but not as strongly. Okay, so again, adding a neumorphic design. So we want to add another shadow. And the way we do that is that we add a comma, and then we put in the next rule. Like I said, next is that I use exactly the same coordinates, well, the reverse. Okay, so plus 10 goes to minus 10. It would help if I put the px in, so I'm not an idiot. I am an idiot, but stay with me. And there are no commas in this. Let's make sure I write this code correctly. Okay, and then 15 pixels. I'm going to leave the others the same, 15 and 5 pixels. And this time, like I say, I'm going to go RGB. I'll put the alpha in later on. And instead of going 15 down, I'm going 15 up. So instead of 225, I'm going to go to 240. Instead of 235, I'm going to go to 245. And instead of 235, I'm going to go to 250. Okay, just make sure I've got that right. Yep. So there we go. And again, you can see how that nice highlight now makes it stand out from the left-hand top edge. So we've got it pointing out on both sides. And again, a lot of people might say that's a little bit too strong. So again, all we do, turn it into RGBA and add in a 0.5 alpha channel to soften it up a lot more. And I say this is entirely up to you how much you want to change it around to get the same design. Okay, you want to tweak one number up, one number down, you do it, whatever you like. This is just, in my opinion, the real simple way of doing it. However, our text box doesn't look too good. Okay, it doesn't quite look right. It's got this nice sort of inset look, but it's not really that nice at the moment. So let's see how we can fix that a bit. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to do a few little things to it. First thing is we're going to get rid of the border that exists on it. Okay, so border none. Okay, and suddenly by taking away that border, it gets rid of that inset look, and it is the same as the others. That's really quite a nice quick fix. The trouble is when you click in it, you get this what's called the outline. Okay, now there's a lot of talk about you should not get rid of the outline simply because the outline is used for accessibility. Okay, there are a few things we can do with it. First thing is to realize that happens when we click on it. So when we click in it, that is when it's at focus. So we've got to use the pseudo class of focus on our text box. So dot text box colon focus. And so the first thing we're going to do is do outline. Now we can try this one. Let's go for outline color, and let's use the same color as everything else. See how that looks. So RGB. Okay, so now when we click on it, it's still there, which means the accessibility programs, like text to speech and all that stuff, will still work perfectly with the outline. When you set the outline to none, apparently it messes up with this. But by doing it this way, by setting the outline color to the same, it still allows for the accessibility rules. So I'm told. Okay, Now what we also want to do is just to give it look slightly different when someone clicks into it, and that is really simple. Okay, and all we're going to do is we're going to do the box shadow. So we're actually going to cheat. We're going to copy that line. So it's exactly the same rule. However, what we're going to do is make it an inset instead. Okay, so not an outset or whatever it is, a standard, it's an inset. And when we save that, now when we click inside it, we can see it goes a sort of darker shade, and it does give it a sort of like an embossed, is that the right term? Sort of dropped feelings. Anyway, so that's when we're typing it. When we click out of it, it jumps back up. So it almost gives it a sort of button feel and effect, and it makes it very obvious, especially when you've got several text fields, which one is actually in focus at the time. Okay, and that is it. Hopefully it wasn't too long, this video. It is, what is it? We are, oh crikey, it is actually over 20 minutes. I apologise, but hopefully you've understood how to do the neumorphic design. As I say, apparently this is a very big thing in 2020 if you're making websites. Very popular on mobile devices, I've noticed. And like I say, you can see it's really, really simple. It's just the use of the box shadow. Okay, as long as, like I said, that you have your shadows, you know, are only a few shades out, it seems to work fine. But that's the end of the video. As usual, please do all those like, subscribe, comments, jazz. I'm trying to get this video. I am trying to get this channel to grow. I will be putting stuff in every week, so do hit that subscribe button. And if there's any video you want me to cover, put it in the comments. I'm Zen, signing out. See you next time.